This is SoundNotion, the weekly podcast for new music and music news. I'm Patrick Gulo.
I'm David McDonald.
I'm Sam Merciers.
And this week we're joined by two members of the Brooklyn-based percussion quartet Ensemble et al., Ron Tucker and J. Ross Marshall. Their group's new album, Present Point Past, releasing January 21st, features original compositions and collaborations by the ensemble. They'll have a CD release concert at Spectrum in New York City on January 18th, and we'll be previewing a clip from one of the album's tracks, No Matter How Fast You Run Today, You Will Never Catch Up to Tomorrow, later on in the show. New Music Box calls them quirky and mysterious, so we'll see if that's actually true today. Guys, thanks for joining us.
I'm skeptical.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Can people really be that quirky if you meet them on Skype? I mean, that's pretty mainstream now, right?
I guess so. It depends on if you can actually wear pants if you have everything from up here.
Yeah, that's the real test. What are you wearing underneath the break here?
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is not television, but they are on camera. And in TV, when you want to make somebody quirky or ugly, you put glasses on them, you know.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Oh, man. I'm like,
all right.
You fit the bill, huh?
Yeah. I'm out of here.
What? At some point, then, Sam, you have to take the glasses off, and then they shake out their hair.
Right.
And then we see that they were beautiful all along.
Yeah, an ugly girl on TV is a gorgeous girl with glasses on.
Right.
An ugly percussionist on the internet is a gorgeous percussionist with glasses on. There we go.
So speaking of contemporary percussion music.
Yeah. So, how did you guys get started? We'll get into the new album and everything, but I want to get a little bit of history because it's interesting reading about you guys because it's like you're reading about a band that gets together and starts meeting and coming up with tunes together. So I want to get the origin story of you guys.
yeah, you're right. In that, I guess we kind of do operate more as a band than, I guess, like a traditional chamber group.
I'd say we came together a bit more that way as well.
Yeah, so it all started with me writing some of my own compositions, all percussion-based compositions, and then I just put the music out on what's the website called?
SoundCloud?
No.
On Craigslist.
Bandcamp.
Yeah. Well, yeah, on like Bandcamp or SoundCloud, but I went on Craigslist and just started looking, posting stuff and looking for people to play this music with. And Ross was the first person I found on Craigslist, and we gelled well. And from there, Ross met Charlie, who plays drum set in the group, at a party. And
Hello?
Something happened at a party. Party, yada, yada, yada.
So yeah, met Charlie there. We started playing together as a trio for quite a while, and then we found our fourth member about a year.
2 years ago now.
Oh yeah, it was 2 years ago now, and I stalked him online. I went to the NYU's percussion website, and it's pretty interesting because on the NYU percussion website they list the students' bios. So I went through all the students' bios. And found Jeff. He sounded interesting, so I just emailed him up and asked, and we met up and had a drink, and we started playing together.
Excellent.
It's funny.
Yeah, so it is kind
Go
of.
ahead.
So we kind of met in kind of. I guess maybe it's traditional for New York City because there's a lot of people, and Craigslist is a good way to find people. But to get back to your original, I guess question is I guess we do kind of see ourselves as kind of like the chamber group is more kind of like indie rock too, in the way that we kind of come up with compositions and work collaboratively together.
Yeah, well, that's kind of been my thesis on the show about the new indie classical or whatever. A lot of people hate that term, but whatever. That music, everybody knows what I'm talking about, is that the biggest thing that sets it apart and connects it to the pop music world, which is something people want to talk about, is the way the music is generated, which is more collaborative band-like and not as much like singling out the composer with a capital C as somebody who, is responsible for what you're hearing. But have you guys done collaborations with specific composers? Or like have you had an original piece written specifically for you? Or has everything that you guys do been something that you were at least in part responsible for generating?
Yeah, I would say it's the latter. I mean, everything we've done is we've pretty much been responsible for generating the. We haven't had anybody write anything specifically for us, but we have taken other composers' work and, with their permission, arranged it ourselves, basically. So we've taken some tunes by a composer friend of Ron's and put them together in our own way. So yeah, we do operate in that way, but again, it's still very insular to the group. It's not us commissioning an outside composer or anything like that.
Right.
And do you think that, or I should ask it this way: how do you think that changes the relationship you have to the music that you play?
It's a good question.
Like, do you think that you're making the thing that you're making is then different from the way that groups that work with outside composers make music?
I think yeah, I mean, it's different in terms of the process. I think it sounds different. I think the product maybe sounds a little bit different, but ultimately, I mean, we're working with the same pieces and we're not writing anything that one individual person couldn't write. So yes and no would be my answer.
Yeah, I guess maybe just I guess a product of working collaboratively and just kind of like within the band and not having commissioning works or working with composers is our work kind of stands or has a certain aesthetic to it. I would say every composer has like a certain kind of aesthetic of like their work or like their overall kind of vibe or emotion. But I think that's particularly true with kind of what we're doing, and we kind of all draw from a kind of a same kind of emotional place, if you will.
So do you guys just kind of go into like jam sessions and eventually you'll have a finished product of something? And
that's definitely one way we do. Yeah, for sure. As a matter of fact, it's funny. That's exactly what we did last night for a minute. So a lot of times we'll just find ourselves jamming or, working on some sort of theme, or one person will come in with, I've got this, this part here. Let's improvise on it. But then a lot of times it's really, certain levels of this tune is fully composed. Let's figure out how to play it versus, I have this tune that Charlie does this a lot. I wrote this tune on a guitar and it has 3 guitar parts. Let's figure out how to put it on what we've got and then expand from there. So it's varying degrees of somewhere between mostly through composed and jamming on themes. So
right.
It's interesting. I would think that working on all of this music yourself would make the whole catalog of your work sound much more similar, more homogenous, like the catalog, as Sam was saying, of a band. When you listen to a band and then listen to another album by that same band, you, I think, much more easily make a connection that this is from the same group, the same perspective, than if you listen to 2 different albums by traditional chamber musicians, because they're playing completely different music on each of those albums. But I would think that for a group like you that is comprised of the same people and then performing your own music all the time, would think that lends much more of a through line for all of your works as a whole. Is that something that you think about? Do you think about creating a sound world for your group, or does it just happen to be the things that you've made all fit together?
I guess we have an overall aesthetic of what we all, our interests in what we all listen to are they're all similar. I
think we have a shared pool of inspiration, basically.
And I don't think we have really thought about it like, okay, we're gonna make a record that's has this feeling or this emotional arc. A lot of it's just kind of writing tunes that we enjoy and tunes that we enjoy playing and ideas that appeal to us, and we just put it out there. I think it just kind of happens automatically as far as having a overarching emotion to a record. I'm kind of curious to ask you. I'm not sure if you listened to our previous record, when the tape runs out. But it's like it was like the EP that we put out a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago now.
I've listened to stuff on your SoundCloud. I don't know from whence that came.
Okay, got it. So
I think some of that is from the EP, probably.
Yeah, there is some stuff in the EP on the SoundCloud, but I'd be curious to know if you thought that some of those earlier tunes, worked with the new record, but maybe you can't answer that since you don't know.
Yeah, I don't know which of those was which, so I probably can't answer it because I don't know where they were coming from.
So I'm curious about your connection to, for lack of a better word, popular music, because a lot of the music is very song form sounding, and not, let's see, how do I put this? It's very accessible, a lot of it, and very groove based, and the kind of thing that it wouldn't be hard to convince someone who, if you say, I've got a new piece by this chamber group, and they might go, but then you play this music for them and they would be a lot more receptive to it than they might imagine when you describe it to them. So I'm wondering what your connection to the pop music world is, considering the way the music sounds and its formal organization, and it doesn't seem to be excessively long, which is also a big pop music kind of thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. It's there for sure. The connection is real, and I think the way that it comes across. I mean, obviously, we all, pop music is part of popular music, for lack of a better term, as you said, is part of our lexicon and part of our inspiration pool. And I mean, furthermore, 3/4 of us, I would say, spent most of the last, I don't know, between 5 years to a decade or more, I guess, all playing in rock bands, So we've all been drummers in rock bands, basically, where you that's the kind of music you're trying to play. That's the kind of process that you're working with, where you sit down and you collaborate on tunes together. So it's not just, we're trying to incorporate pop music sounds into, or pop music songwriting techniques into our work. It's just like that's kind of the way we operate. And we definitely, we listen to a lot of popular music between us, for sure, from indie rock to probably more pop music even. But yeah, does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah. Well, does making the music accessible to the listener, is it a conscious decision, or is it just played out that way?
I think it's just played out that way, because a lot of times I think a lot of times we are unconcerned about that. We have, a couple 7-minute songs on the record that we maybe could have made 4-minute songs if we really were interested in that, going for that demographic, I guess, or that, that sort of taste. But I don't think we feel the need to make our music pop music, but I think it sneaks in there,
Right.
I'm along those lines. I'm curious what kinds of venues you guys play, because it seems like this is the kind of music that could fit in a lot of different places.
We're curious too.
Well, that's been kind of the rub, I guess. We played art galleries. That was our first few shows, was at art galleries.
We played a couple of bars, or bar-like venues, I guess. Which is always fun to lug a 4-octave marimba into a bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Where the rub is, it's like I think we could play, rock clubs and like nightclubs, like the Lower East Side, like piano. I don't know if you're familiar with these places, but maybe your listeners, viewers are. But
Patrick is.
I think our music would fit in those places, but just our gear won't. And also, when sound men see marimbas and vibraphones and glockenspiels, I think they start pulling their hair out, wondering what the hell they're going to do.
But we've also played more, for lack of a better word, traditional concert hall sort of venues, like Roulette, or I think. We played at a couple performing arts centers, like out in Queens. We played like a real auditorium performing arts center. And then, for example, the place we're playing on Saturday, the January 18th show at Spectrum, is sort of a loft performance space kind of venue, which I think it's sort of like the neutral ground between like art gallery, concert hall, and rock venue, you know? So I think that might be kind of where we feel most at home, is in those kind of spaces and performance, you know, for lack of a better word, like loft performance spaces, I guess.
Right.
Well, it seems like it's a shame that you can't fit that stuff into those places, because it seems like the music would go over really well in those kinds of venues.
We did play at Pete's Candy Store once, which was, if you've ever been to Pete's Candy Store, is probably the smallest stage in the world.
We played rock.
I don't know. I've played on the smallest stage in the world, I think. Everybody says that.
I don't know. The Cornelia Street Cafe has a pretty small stage, too. You can fit about 2.5 people on it. So it might be tough for you guys to play there. But certainly some places like Subculture and LPR and those sorts of places would be really receptive to your group, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I think so too.
It's weird that there's a lot of movement to get chamber groups into things like, you know, the cocktail hour at bars and this kind of thing, because everybody's talking about how to get new audiences and open up the music. And the problem is with, you know, you can't go in there and play Quartet for the End of Time and have people ordering cocktails and that kind of thing, because it just won't work. But if the music is more consistently groove oriented, which yours seems to be, and doesn't consistently rely on the super low end of the dynamic scale, it works just physically or acoustically much better in that environment. So here's the suggestion. The next album,
let's hear it.
The next album, really consciously, like, write your music the way you write it, but consciously try to make it for small portable instruments. So seriously, like, if you could haul your stuff in and set it up in 10 minutes, you know, guys could play lots of that kind of venue.
It's funny you mentioned that, because we actually this past summer we attempted to kind of rearrange some of our pieces for a smaller setup, so we wouldn't have to take a marimba to a gig, and trying to put those parts onto a keyboard, so we could take like our Hohner keyboard. It's like a kind of a smaller Fender Rhodes type keyboard, but we found that it just didn't work.
Well, it didn't work to rearrange the old stuff. None of that worked for some reason. It's just, you know, there's something about the marimba that's different. Excuse me for 1 second.
Yeah, but we do have some. We're actually working on some new material that doesn't use the marimba, and I think that has been a conscious effort to try to open up some performance opportunities for us.
Well, sure,
and some sound palette opportunities for sure.
Well, you know, like if you write a piece that requires a piano as a composer, you know that it's not likely to be performed at, you know, during the cocktail hour somewhere, because they probably don't have a piano.
Unless you're at a hotel.
Yeah.
Hotel lobby.
So what I'm curious about is if you have any plans to begin commissioning pieces from outside sources or continue to generate it from within the group the way you do now.
As of right now, no, we don't have any plans for that. There was a composer that we performed at the bake sale last year. It's a new music bake sale in New York. It's an annual event, and we had a composer that approached us and mentioned or showed interest in composing a piece for us. And we've talked a few times, and that's a conversation that I want to open up again, but not to downplay our skills. But we mentioned we came from more of a kind of band or indie rock background, and I would say like half of our players, 2 of the guys in the group can read pretty well, and like 2 of the other guys maybe don't read as well. But so maybe we've had like we've been a little scared in that way. But
to that point though, in all of the talks that we've had about trying to bring in outside composers, we've often thrown around the idea of trying to commission a composer, but ask them to sort of work with our process, you know? So like you said, like we said, you know, we're not always, you know, writing a piece and here you go, here's your sheet music, let's go for it. It's, you know, it's like I described earlier, it's like very jam oriented, very improvisational, very like fit this piece with that piece and work it out in the studio. And so we've often toyed with the idea of, you know, asking a composer who's interested in working with us more and on a more involved basis to sort of like work within that process, which again, that we haven't thrown that idea out there, but we haven't moved forward with it yet. So
that's interesting. It's kind of like the creation for method for early big band, where you just kind of like sing a line at the section and say, you guys play this thing, and then another, or gospel choir arrangements often created that way. You know, everybody in this group sing this thing, and that's your line, and then everybody over here sing this thing, that's your line. And I think that would be a really interesting way to write music for a group like you guys, especially in that smaller setting. You can do so many more intricate things than you could do in a big choir or something, but have the freedom of that creative process and that immediate feedback, I think would be really cool for the composer you're working with.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah, it's interesting. Go ahead.
I was going to say, as you come across composers who would fit, you can let us know. Pass them along.
Well,
we're interested.
I think it's interesting to think about writing music that way, because it would be an interesting challenge for a composer, because the ability to get across an idea of what you want to hear in certain cases might be easier if you know you don't have to rely on regular old dots and lines to make it happen.
Sure, yeah.
You know what's really interesting? I feel like a lot of times that process, especially with percussion ensembles, happens anyway at the first rehearsal.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless it's a percussionist writing unless it's one of you guys writing for your own ensemble, you know. If you're an outside composer writing for a percussion group, especially if you're not a percussionist, it's like you're kind of guessing, you know, at what you think you want to hear. And the proof is always in the pudding when they actually start trying to make it happen.
It's true. Yeah, and to that point, I think, the percussion ensemble is definitely where that happens most, you know, where you get into the rehearsal room and it's like, oh, wait, I don't want it to sound like that. Use the other break drum, or, you know, whatever
the other mallet or the other part of the break drum. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
But it's because, you know, the instruments are not as well known by composers, but also not as well defined as, you know, a violin or something like that just has this tradition and it has a sound pretty well defined. There's so many gradients of sound within percussion, which is definitely something we exploit all the time.
Yeah, it seems like with modern communication technology, some kind of collaborative composing for you guys using your sort of approach to composition would be easy to pull off. Like send a sketch and some sample tracks and then do like a Skype rehearsal where the composer is able to watch you hack at it a little bit and you guys can go back and forth and, you know, there it is. I think that would work. So there it is. That's the next album.
There it is. Also a good Skype advertisement.
Yes.
That's right. Well, except that, you know, Skype crashes occasionally.
Yeah, well.
And we were all sure that when Microsoft bought Skype, all the problems would go away. It hasn't happened. So tell us about the newest album. Is there anything new or different in your approach to getting this one done that's different than what you've done before? Or and tell us about the release concert and all that stuff.
Well, as far as so this record, I mentioned the EP that we released 3 years ago. That was recorded all by my lonesome in our rehearsal studio. Something that's different for this record is we actually went out, and hired a engineer and went to a proper studio and played it all live in the studio.
Rather than multi-tracking, which was the first record.
Yeah, which is the first record I played it all myself and just kind of multi-tracked everything. So, and I think it's noticeable as far as the the production values, but then also just you can hear in the compositions that it's a live recording and not a lot of production with multi-track stuff.
Right.
So for us as a group, that was a great experience, and something that we had been wanting to do for a while, and finally had done it. As far as like the approach, this album as well is more collaborative in nature, like we had been talking about. Whereas the EP was kind of like the beginning stages of the group, and the new record is the product of kind of
the full band approach.
Yeah, the full band approach, and where we've been trying to get to for the past couple years. So, and we've achieved it. So,
yeah.
I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
No, you mentioned talk a little bit about the show on the 18th. Basically, we're playing the album, just like running it down as it appears on the record, and then we'll also have a few old tunes that didn't get recorded for this record, and then a few new tunes that we're already working on for the next record. So
what's the total runtime of this release?
This release, I think it's 33 minutes.
So it's kind of somewhere between.
It's kind of in between an EP and a full length, but we're coming out strong.
I
Make it however
it as
long you want. Digital album.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I know in this day and age, it's like I don't think it matters.
You don't have to be ruled by the amount of stuff you can fit on that piece of physical media anymore.
Right.
But speaking of that piece of physical media, do you have one there with the album art on it?
We do indeed.
Yes. So this is the. Oh, here.
So,
That's very sharp.
is there someone in the group did you do the album art yourself? Because often in bands, speaking of bands, it's always there's the graphic design guy in the group who wants to design the album cover. So who did that?
Well, so what's interesting, actually, the EP, Ron did the album cover of When the Tape Runs Out, which if you look it up on our Bandcamp page, it's a beautiful cover with this the tape, a cassette tape with all the tape pulled out. It's a great album cover that Ron did. For this one, however, we actually collaborated with a good friend of mine, Bobby Ginalo is his name, and he's a really awesome designer, web designer, and does toy design as well. He's just a really great designer brain. He's amazing. And so we talked to him. He really dug our music, and we kind of just threw some ideas around about what we thought of our music, what he thought of our music, and our approach, etc. The process for this album, etc. Like we just talked to you, and with the prompt of the name, he came to us with this Phases of the Moon idea, and we took one look at it, and we were like, "That's perfect.
Sold.
It works." So so that's it. We just kind of let him take his inspiration and run, and he did a beautiful job. We really love it.
And oh yeah, so you can see. So if you look at the present point past art, actually both of the artwork, when you receive an actual hard copy of the CD, these are all hand stamped. So it's a CD case, like I don't know what they're called.
It's like a sleeve, I guess.
A sleeve, yeah. Right. And so this is all hand done with an ink, like a 5-inch ink stamp.
Nice.
So they're all hand stamped. And it has a very kind of handmade feel to it. They're not like mass produced or anything.
That's very
like
cool.
Times.
That's very cool. We've talked about that a lot on the show over the last couple of years. Is people making the physical media special and trying to do something unique. Because I say this all the time. I've got enough stuff in my apartment. I don't need another CD I'm only going to listen to a digital rip of from my phone, and most of the time I'm listening to it. But if you make the thing cool enough, then I do want it. I every time we talk about it, I show these things that I have within arm's reach. But this is Michael Gordon's Timber, recorded by Slagwerk Den Haag, and it's this awesome metal and wood box thing that is really beautiful, and I love having it around. I mean, that's why it's out in arm's reach, because I like looking at it. And there's all kinds of stuff like that I think people are just starting to get really creative with. In fact, speaking of percussion ensembles, we talked to So Percussion a few months ago, and they had a bunch of like interesting physical things that were part of their record release. I don't remember the title of the record anymore when we were talking to them. But
was it the John Cage?
No, it was after the Cage. It was like the Cage was the kind of their first try at this stuff, but it was more recent than that.
It's the newer one.
Yeah.
It had a crazy amount of stuff that you could get if you ordered the actual physical recording.
Yeah,
Dave's
looking
it up.
Cool. I'm looking it up. But anyway,
for these cool physical media demonstrations, Dave, we need to get you that flash drive buried in a bar of soap. We had a story a couple of weeks ago about there was an award, an unofficial award, I guess, for best physical media packaging, and one of them was the music was on a flash drive that was in a bar of soap, and it was clear and you could see it. And Dave, you need one of those for. Are
you trying to say that I don't bathe enough? I need a bar of soap?
No, I'm saying you need to spend some more money on something that we can show on the show.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure that I agree with that.
But yeah, like what you're saying with the packaging, I mean, it's more about kind of an art object at that point. You know,
right.
you can put the music on, you know, your computer or phone or what have you and listen to it. But like having that CD in hand's reach, it's because you enjoy looking at it and having it as an art object. And I don't think our record necessarily, like hand stamping it makes it feel special and handmade. It's not necessarily an art object per se, but I agree. Like that's the kind of the way of the future, at least the way I see it.
Yeah.
Right.
That record, by the way, that I was trying to think of So Percussions is called Neither Anvil Nor Pulley.
Yeah. That's right.
It's like one long piece by the
Dan
composer
Truman.
is Dave. Yeah,
Dan Truman.
Yeah.
But speaking of this physical stuff,
you beat me to the segue, Dave.
Sorry. Have any of you New York people ever been to this record store? Or I don't. It's not really even seems like not even a record store, but J&R.
It's an appliance
J&R
store that
Computer
happened to have
World.
a classical music section.
Have you guys been to this place?
Interesting.
Yeah, it's I've been there once. Like I believe it's downtown, right? In the financial.
Yeah, I went there once too. But I think when I went, it was still like kind of dwindling. Their library was getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah,
but I mean, apparently back in the day, it was like the place. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And there aren't a lot of classical record stores, and there aren't even a lot of record stores anymore that have a decent classical collection that's curated by a person that cares.
Right.
And it seems as though J&R is going to be getting rid of this part of the store, that they're not going to sell classical records anymore, and online or in their store. So that's one fewer place that you can buy physical things. Now, I am not terribly broken up about this. Some people seem very upset about this. As I said earlier, I've transitioned to mostly a digital media existence. But even on top of that, even the cool physical things that I have, like this Michael Gordon record and, the kind of, Tristan Parrish 1-bit symphony stuff that I have, like, I ordered that online. I didn't walk into a store and have a relationship with the clerk in the store, and maybe that's just because I'm antisocial. But I feel like the cool things that I learn about that I want to get, I learn about either from the site that sells it or from another interesting interaction that I have on the internet. And I'm not sure if if there's a lot of value left to these physical retailers. Sam?
Well, I think it's related to the age of the shopper. Like they have at the bottom of it, it's a on the WQXR blog that the story we're reading about this record store, and they have a survey at the end. Where do you buy classical recordings, specifically classical, through paid download stores, through online CD stores, through remaining brick and mortar CD stores, or through illegal download sources, which is funny because I think that of all the genres out there, classical music probably suffers the least from, piracy.
It's just because of the metadata, though.
Right. It's not worth it. You don't know who the conductor or who the performers or what the pieces or who the composers are or anything else.
That drives me crazy.
Yeah, that's one of our major beefs that we talk about. It's really Dave's big beef that he complains about, but it's everybody's beef. But you can do it, and then you can answer the survey, and then see the results. And like 65% of people said that they get their stuff through online CD stores, and the next category is through physical media stores. And I think that has to do with the age of people who still buy classical recordings, whatever that means.
You know what else is the primary way that I listen to music today isn't one of the options is streaming on Spotify.
Yeah, that's well, and it says purchase, and certainly if you have a premium Spotify account, then you are sort of purchasing, but it's certainly a gray area.
I spend money.
Yeah, but if you consider not that many people buy classical recordings and fewer and fewer people buy physical recordings, and that population is getting older and older, it's no surprise whatsoever that the Buggy Whip store, this record store, is not going to carry classical music anymore.
Right.
I think as far as the classical industry or classical retail in general, this is nothing compared to when Padelson's closed in New York City. That was like the mecca of looking at sheet music. Which is in this place is like no more. And there was a huge outcry about that when it closed a number of years back now. But I don't see J&R compared to anything like that. And it's because people consume media differently today, but for the most part, we're still using sheet music in a traditional way.
Well, I also wonder how much it's people are used to everything good is closing because the media is all changing, So it's kind of like it's no surprise that this big classical record store is closing after so many other places like the sheet music place, like Tower Records, even people aren't surprised anymore.
Yeah, well, they can't. And the few physical places to buy records in general, not just classical records, but records in general, you can't buy those physically anymore. It seems like anywhere except for a handful of tiny independent stores that are not cheap to buy records from, or Walmart, right? And that's pretty. It's that divide, and Walmart remains the world's largest physical record retailer. So, and they have like a tiny little bit of all the records that are released. That's the reason that this sucks, is that we're losing a little bit of serendipity in discovery, and that's a problem that digital music hasn't really solved yet. Is discoverability.
Well, there's a new streaming service launching in the new year, and they're going to do so with a huge media blitz, including a ad spots on Ellen DeGeneres, or whatever the name of her show is, a Super Bowl commercial, and lots of commercials.
Well, Sam, I like streaming music. Who's streaming this music to me?
Beats Music. It's a new streaming service, and there's a few things. They're entering the fray with a lot of other streaming services, but the difference here is it's subscription only. There is no free version that's supported by ads or anything like that. It's going to focus mainly on mobile. And a big thing that they talk about a lot is their discovery, for lack of a better word, method. Whereas like Pandora uses, its sort of computerized musicologist, whatever approach to tell you what to listen to. This is a combination of sort of algorithmic functions, but they also have what they call programmers who tweak things. So in other words, there's more human intuition and knowledge behind the suggestions that you receive. At least that's what they say. An example would be like a typical streaming service that's going to give you suggestions based on your listening history. If you like Paul Simon, here, listen to Garfunkel, which, if you're a big solo Paul Simon guy, doesn't necessarily mean that you're into Art Garfunkel's solo music, which is nothing like it. So we'll see how it plays out. There's not a lot to say, except they're obviously willing to spend a lot of money to get this going, and we'll see what happens. but the people involved, and Trent Reznor is like a big artistic director. The main guy is, I forgot his name. Hold on. Oh, got it. Is
Dr.
Jimmy. Well, no. Jimmy Iovine, I guess. He's a big record engineer, producer guy who's been in the business for a long time. And they're convinced that streaming is the way things are going, which I wouldn't argue against.
The problem is I can't stream anything on the subway. Like, there's no internet.
True. Yeah.
And
well, I think the answer to that is free Wi-Fi on the subway.
Or you just cache the thing to your. I mean, the streaming services let you save a copy to your device.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the paid account, right?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't cover how that would be covered with this service, but we'll see. But it's interesting to me that it's pay only, and they're going to push hard to get people to buy into it. With the claim is you haven't seen a music marketing scenario this intense since the iTunes Dancing Silhouettes marketing scheme. That if you think back, 8 or however many years, it seems like you couldn't turn the television on without seeing one of those dancing silhouette commercials.
Oh, for the iPod.
Yeah, for the iPod.
They were dancing around. Yeah.
I do have one point about that though, which it makes me hopeful. The marketing stuff aside, what they're talking about the discovering new music, sort of tweaking the algorithms and stuff. I find that really exciting, actually, because if you go to somewhere like Pandora or Spotify and you turn on, their radio portion, they always just send you, the new music that they give you a lot of times is just based on like artist associations, So if you're listening to Bob Dylan, it's going to give you Neil Young or something like that. But I oftentimes I find that, I put on a type of music because I want that mood or I want that vibe, And so if their algorithm is pushing more towards that way, that, you put on a piece of music and it's not just giving you contemporary artists or related artists or something like that, it's giving you more music that actually sounds like this music. That's kind of exciting. So I don't know, Have be hopeful for maybe better discoveries than something like Spotify or Pandora, but who knows? We'll see.
Yeah,
I think the mood thing, have you tried Songza?
Songza? No, I'll check it out.
Songza. That's their shtick, is that they try to feed a bunch of music to you that fits a particular mood.
They do, yeah.
Actually, the person who wrote the article in the New York Times about Beats Music mentions Songza and says that with all the talk and hype about how their system for generating playlists is so much more intelligent and everything, at least the person who wrote the article says that Songza is equally as consistently good. So
that's great.
We'll see. It's $10, I think, a month.
No free tier.
No free tier. $10. We'll see what happens. I'll try and remember to look into that in a couple of months and see how it's going.
Yeah. Sam, You need a job?
I do, actually. What I was thinking? If I could program all the music. If I could program all the music and plan all the programs and design the artistic vision for Symphony Space, that would be awesome. So the people who work at Symphony Space who are obviously watching the show should give me a call. Have your people talk to my people.
Well, it's funny that you should want to do that because that job actually just opened up. Did you know that?
I did.
Laura Kaminsky left.
Laura Kaminsky, artistic director of Symphony Space since 2010, is leaving. And it says that it's amicable, and I don't doubt that, but it does say in the piece that she's leaving, she's not going to pursue, alpaca farming or whatever. She's leaving because Symphony Space says they want to try something new and go in a different direction, which is weird because it seems like they've been going in a different direction, and I like the direction they were headed.
What do you mean,
programming at Symphony Space was I really enjoyed it.
Adventurous and wide-ranging stylistically.
Yeah, they had a lot of great, especially chamber groups, and showcased a lot of composers that weren't heard as often as you might want them to be. This was a place for them to really get heard, and it's a great place for music like that, the Upper West Side too. Whereas sometimes you can have a bit of a stuffy attitude, I guess. Not so much maybe in the recent years, but as the tradition of such a thing being in that area maybe was borderline like stuffy. But
It says
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's in the store next for their programming, but I mean, it's going to be different.
Cynthia Elliott, the president and chief executive of Symphony Space, said, quote, "The areas in which Laura, the leading artistic director, has been most involved, music and festivals, are the areas that we're in the process of rethinking. And we're also rethinking the role of the artistic director at Symphony Space. We want to take time to figure out exactly where we're going with these things." Which to me sounds like a way of saying she had to go for some reason, and we're not going to tell you exactly what it was.
Well, I mean, they just had different ideas about. I mean, I'm guessing that the ideas were just different about how they wanted to continue programming their series, the different series they have there.
Well, hopefully they will get somebody good, and it will continue down the path of not sucking.
Well, speaking of symphonies, the Chicago Symphony Orchestra has been the topic of a lot of conversation over the last few weeks. They launched a new site, and citing the kind of diminishing community of professional classical music reviewers and professional classical music criticism in general, they have launched their own music journalism site, as they call it, called CSO Sounds and Stories. And there are a lot of people that are very upset about the fact that an organization is launching basically a magazine that is going to cover itself. And they feel that there's some missing objectivity there. What do you think, Sam?
Depends if it's reviews or not.
Doesn't the
if it's reviews, there might be an issue.
Wasn't the Met has something like this, right?
Well, Opera News is a Met production.
Opera News is a production is a publication by the Metropolitan Opera Guild. But I mean, to be honest, I mean they can bash the Met as good as anybody.
Yeah, but I'm with you, Dave. I would have maybe some issue with this if it weren't called CSO Sounds and Stories.
Right. There's no secret.
There's zero effort to conceal the fact that they're eating their own dog food here, It's stories by the CSO about the CSO, and that is explicitly clear.
If you're looking at the video version, this giant thing is a CSO logo, and you have to type into your web browser csosoundsandstories.org to get there, and it says CSO no less than 6 places that I can see in the first screenful.
Yeah, top left corner, Chicago Symphony Orchestra.
So this is not a surprise. It should not be a surprise to anybody. If they were trying to fool people, that's fine. And I really think that this is a good thing. Because and what would be great is if it actually covered things outside the Chicago Symphony. Right now, they seem to just be kind of previewing Chicago Symphony stories.
So it's like the Chicago Symphony newsletter.
It's a little bit like a newsletter or like a corporate blog kind of thing. But here's the thing. I would be really interested if they have an editor, a newspaper traditional journalism editor, and if they're working with writers that can write, send them out and cover other stuff. I want to know what this site thinks of the chamber music that's going on in Chicago. I want to know what they think of the theater in Chicago, whatever's going on.
Yeah, I mean,
do you think that could potentially draw away from their ticket sales if they highlight other organizations?
It's not a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
It's not a zero-sum game.
Interest and excitement about classical music across the board is good for any orchestra.
You can go, it's possible for you to go to the Chicago Symphony Orchestra on one night and the next night go take in
the Civic Orchestra
play
in Chicago.
Or another orchestra or a string quartet.
And if you're on a budget, that might be a problem. Like if you have you can only spend so much money 1 week or something like that, and you chose
sure.
Well, then you do that instead of going to see Bruce Springsteen. I mean, the competition. I mean, this is not. It boggles my mind that we are worried about competing with other arts organizations for this minuscule piece of a minuscule pie, right?
Yeah.
There's not enough stuff to get that angry about the competition.
Yes.
There's not enough stuff available to fight over. So
And
let's work together and make the pie bigger, right? That's the solution to the problem.
Some of the beef about this has centered around the idea that it's going to take work away from people that work for newspapers. But the stories that they're doing are the kind of stuff that newspapers don't do anymore. They barely cover classical music as it is. And if they do, they don't do stuff. They don't do, they don't do the kind of stuff that the CSO Sound and Stories is doing. And, they hired a real person, Laura Emmerich, who was a film critic editor, was Roger Ebert's editor at the Chicago Sun-Times. And I doubt she's doing it for nothing. Mm-hmm. So they've hired an actual person who has some actual expertise in the field. And so I think they should do just what you said, Dave. They should try and make the most of it. If they're going to spend money on a real person, they should do some real stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and this is what modern companies do, is they develop a relationship with an audience. And I think this is the value here, is that this is going to develop a relationship with people that are into the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and they will have this other avenue to connect with this organization. And that's a good thing. Modern companies do this more often than arts organizations probably think. Arts organizations are just so stuck in the way business was done in the 1960s. It drives me crazy. Like, if you
I don't know. I see a lot of collaborations between organizations in the classical world, especially in New York. But for things like Britain 100, there were some 30 organizations just in LA that got for an LA celebration of Benjamin Britten. And the same in New York, the 92nd Street Y, New York Philharmonic collaborate all the time. They have their own contact. Both of them are contact series, incorporates both of those organizations. And so it does happen. I wouldn't say it's as hostile as maybe you're making it out to be.
The issue, though, is spending money on these kinds of things. This is not. I'm talking not about the competition thing anymore. About spending money developing this journalism outlet. This is what companies do: is they develop relationships with customers now. Marketplaces, markets are conversations. So says the Clue Train Manifesto. And the point is that you have to develop these personal relationships with people and not entities, and this is a great way to do it. Evernote, which is a wonderful note-taking app for organizing stuff, if you've got a device that connects to the internet, it probably has an Evernote app for it. And they have a tech blog, and they have a journalist that they hired from a regular tech journalism site, and he writes reviews of phones and things that don't even touch the thing that they sell, just because the people that are interested in Evernote are also interested in the things that he is writing about, and then they're there on the Evernote site and interacting with somebody that works at the company and having a relationship with that. And I think that's a great way for when we talk about building the audience and the value of outreach. This is a great way to do it.
Yep. Hey guys, what are you up to for the next 4.5 hours?
Nap maybe.
Well, I was thinking that we could strap on a little Einstein on the beach and watch it online.
That's not possible. I don't think that sounds like something you could do.
It actually is. For the first time, and Dave and I were talking about this morning, we don't know if this is absolutely true, but to our knowledge, the first time Einstein on the Beach has ever been available in its entirety in streaming video online.
Right now, I don't think there's ever even been a recording you could buy of the whole thing in video, has there?
I don't know. I mean, I know there's audio recordings, but I don't know about the whole staged thing. It's available through, what is it, May 7th?
Yeah, so you have plenty of time.
Through a French website, the entire program of Einstein on the Beach is available.
It was a production by the Théâtre du Chalet.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch it while it was streaming? It was, I guess, what it was Monday or something. They performed it, and it was streaming. So it was, a lot of us were watching it at work. But the best thing was Nico Muley, composer Nico Muley, live tweeting his watching of Einstein Beach.
I heard about that.
It was brilliant.
Nico Muley tweeting about anything is usually
brilliant. It's true.
pretty
entertaining. No, I didn't watch the thing, but I have been linked to his Twitter feed from that time, and I've read a few of the tweets. It's pretty funny. I saw the production live when it was on tour, and it was pretty great. And I'm not a big Glass fan, and I don't think I would want to listen to this on a record, but I would probably watch video of it because the visual stuff was very, very cool. I'm curious about how they capture it because a lot of it is very small, and part of what's cool about it is that there's a really big stage where something relatively small is happening, and that's really interesting. And then there are other times where the choreography is almost like marching band drill, where the interesting part of it is what is happening on a macro level to everything moving, up and down stage and all the cool things there. So I'm curious about how the way it's captured on video translates that gestalt that I got watching it live.
From the video that I saw that was streaming, it was actually pretty remarkable because I think it's the first time I've seen something quite so avant-garde and so like what you're describing, basically shot so well, because it was shot as well as like the Met and HD productions.
Cool.
Where you have big wide shots, you have little close-ups, you have all the in between, and like you said, the dance scenes feel enormous. And then when it's Helga Davis reciting the Mr. Bojangles monologue or something, it's really close up on her. So it looked fantastic.
Great. Well, we've said before on the show that we're big fans of the Met in HD.
I'm going to subject my students to a little bit of that on Monday, I think.
Oh, yeah? The Met in HD or the Einstein?
No, the Einstein. I'm going to find the most abstract, most dislikable part of it and make them watch 60 seconds of it.
Oh, there's some great stuff. I don't know if there's anything that's like immediately dislikable in there. It's pretty approachable. Maybe I'm broken, but I'm definitely broken.
Well, you know what else is very approachable, Dave?
What?
What has affectionately become known as the Bo Diddley beat, or bump 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 bump, which is also very similar, or might be exactly like a New Orleans second line rhythm. I might be wrong about that.
Also similar to a clave,
right?
Latin American clave.
Oh yeah,
right. So anyway,
it's the drummers talking.
I think it's okay to say legendary rock guitarist and singer Bo Diddley passed away. I think when was it? Anyway, he died.
Journalism.
Well said.
Yeah.
Anyway, he died.
2008. June
did he die in 2008?
Yeah, it was quite a few years ago.
Oh, Dave, normally when I see this kind of stuff and I think that it's new, you find that it's old and tell me not to do it.
Well, because you put this in late.
Well, I got it from somebody who I trusted.
Yeah, it's definitely dated 2008, Sam.
Sorry.
It's like right on the site. It says 2008.
Yeah, all right.
This is not a mystery thing. I'm not like getting my Sherlock Holmes hat out to figure out when these articles are written.
Speaking of Sherlock,
is that what those are called?
Yeah.
Speaking of Sherlock, 2 episodes out on BBC. Awesome.
Anyway.
Right. So Bo Diddley is dead.
It's
Who would have thunk
this
it?
just in, Bo Diddley remains dead.
But his legacy continues.
I'm happy to endure embarrassment for everyone's entertainment.
So, I think it's time, Sam.
Time for the pick of the week.
So our pick of the week this week is from our guests, and as Patrick pointed out earlier in the show, it has a rather poetic extended title. I'm gonna read it because I would not remember it and say it correctly. It's called "No Matter How Fast You Run Today, You Will Never Catch Up to Tomorrow," and this is one of these works on the new album, right, guys? This is from the new release.
That's right.
Yes.
So we're gonna listen to a little bit just off the top, and then we'll talk about it a little bit afterwards. You guys have anything you want to say to set this up?
Well, this is the first song off the new record, Present Point Pass, and
I think this might even be the first song we completed for the record, so it kind of set the stage for us.
Yeah, and actually, I think this may be one of the first fully collaborative pieces as well.
Absolutely.
Each member coming up with like their own parts, and all of us piecing the composition together.
Cool. Well, here we go. This is No Matter How Fast You Run Today, You Will Never Catch Up to Tomorrow by our guests, Ensemble et al. All right, thank you guys so much for sharing that with us. I gotta ask where the title came from.
From the brain of Ron Tucker.
So yeah, it's the guys always kind of poke fun of me when we're coming up with song titles, because a lot of times they just have working titles for the longest time, and actually the working title for this tune was "Cymbals as Drumheads," because as the song starts out, there's actually a small cymbal that's on the floor tom of the drum set, and that's you hear. And actually, there's a cymbal on the snare drum as well, so it has this like high pitched, kind of metal sounding snare hit. So anyway, so that's how we refer to the composition, but you can't really,
can't publish
can't put that on the album. And so since our music is instrumental, there's no lyrics. I always find it to be, if you can find a poetic title to help, I guess put the composition in its place.
I would say we're also a little conscious of trying to be descriptive and evocative, but not so much so that still abstract enough that listeners could hear a song title or not and sort of come to their own emotional conclusion to the song.
That's interesting. That you're trying to. It's like you're trying to paint a picture, but just a very vague one.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So that's really interesting. Do you when you perform, do your audiences get the titles? Like, do you have a printed program that has the title, or do you tell them from the stage what the title is, or do you just let them? I'm curious at how closely related these experiences are of the title and the performance.
Sure. Well, we've only had probably 2 performances with actual printed programs. That's like we were talking about earlier. The nature of the kind of places we play are not program kind of places. Sometimes we announce them from stage, and sometimes we don't. I think it depends on the audience. I mean, at that sense, it's kind of like a rock club. It depends on how the audience is feeling and if you're bantering with them and stuff like that. So occasionally yes, occasionally no.
Yeah. And I think I've introduced this tune live a couple times, and you get a couple snickers, or like people kind of like laugh a little bit, like, oh wow, it's like a long title, or it's like we have a song off the first EP called a beautiful walk through an industrial wasteland. And I think people are kind of like, what, thrown off by it. What? But I've had people come up. We've had people come up to us afterwards and said that they enjoy a certain tune, and it's a tune that I introduced, and they are intrigued by the name and have given feedback. So I don't know. I think it helps the listener, but hopefully it doesn't just dumb it down for them as well.
Yeah. Well, and listening to that after having talked to you guys about how you create these compositions together, I think you can really hear how the creative process that you go through lends itself to this kind of music. You have all these layers, and I can imagine trying out layers against other layers in a rehearsal room and saying, grab that one and put those together and see what happens.
Yeah, you're right on. Yeah.
I was wondering, does anybody in the group DJ?
No.
And have you worked with a DJ? Because it seems like it would work.
We haven't. Nobody in the group is a DJ. That's something I'm definitely open to. I would love to put out some music on vinyl to give to DJs to spin, with their stuff, whether it's breakbeat stuff or just spinning records to just matching up beats, whatever. But I think maybe what you're getting at is I come from. Maybe I'm the only one in the group, but I come from an electronic music background as well as playing in just like rock bands, playing drum set in rock bands, and also like studying music in school. I cut my teeth at kind of a lot of production and recording my own music through working on programs in the computer, but then also specifically through electronic music and creating beats for trip hop groups and playing in like electronic bands in like the late 90s. So I think that element, is still a part of me and comes out in kind of the compositions that I help write, and maybe has like that element of like kind of looping type of behavior, if you will.
Looping behavior, yeah, that's right.
That could be a name for another track. Looping behaviors.
Looping behaviors.
We gotta write that one down.
The pieces tend to have a consistent pulse usually, which is really the thing that makes it easiest to think about collaborating with the DJ. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you should instead of a commissioning project, you should do a remixing project.
Yeah, we thought about that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we thought about that. It's I definitely want to get the raw files from our engineer and maybe make that happen in the future.
Well, your first album, since you tracked it all, you'll have clean what is in the biz is called stems.
Yeah.
Nice clean stems of all the individual parts, which would be interesting to work with.
Absolutely, yeah.
There it is. Forget that other thing I said. That's the next album.
Remix record.
Well,
a remix record for composers. Like composers.
That's what I'm saying. Gabriel Prokofiev released a piece called Jerk Driver for solo cello, and the album that it was released on by Non-Classical, which is a UK label, was the piece Jerk Driver for solo cello, and then a set of remixes of the piece that were released at the same time as the piece, which is an interesting idea to me.
Well, and our friends at the Grand Valley State University New Music Ensemble did that with Terry Riley's In C.
Right.
That's right.
They did their In C remix project.
I would say that was one of the things that really made them popular.
Yeah.
And you've also got, you've got New Amsterdam Records here in New York. They're releasing, they're doing all those remixes of Caroline Shaw's Pulitzer piece. And then you've got, our hero Steve Reich, who's writing a piece, like remixing elements of Radiohead. Mm-hmm. So it's in the landscape right now,
I know, which is good. I mean, I think pretending that people in our culture aren't interested in that kind of thing, even people who are interested in art music, is dumb,
Yeah.
I definitely like art music, and I'm definitely interested in that kind of stuff too. So if people would just listen to me and do what I said, everything would be fine.
Right. I mean, I think that would create as many problems as it solves, though.
And on that note,
and before we go, Guys, thank you so much for joining us, Ron and
thank
Ross.
You for having us.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Before we go, do you have anything you want to plug that you haven't plugged yet?
Well, we plugged our January 18th show, which may have happened by the time this airs, or maybe not. Oh no? Great.
This will be online tonight.
January 18th, Saturday, January 18th at Spectrum, and we're playing with Sideband, who is a really awesome laptop group based out of Princeton University. They're playing some new work for like laptop quartet, I think. And then we have Florent Guise, who is a composer and upright bassist, who is performing some solo work with new video, and then we're playing. And then next couple of gigs, we got a gig in February with a group called 10th Intervention, and that's at the Firehouse Space in Brooklyn. And then we're playing the New Music Bake Sale March 16th, I think, at Roulette.
Excellent.
Check us out if you're in New York.
Excellent. Sounds good.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people are going to be doing that.
Very cool.
That's going to do it for this week's episode of SoundNotion. Thank you all to everyone who joined us live. Thank you to everyone who's watching this after the fact in our podcast feed or on YouTube or wherever you're watching it. If you would like to check out any links to any of the stories that we talked about, we'll have links to all that stuff on our site, soundnotion.tv/SN. If you'd like to comment on any of the things that we talked about, if you have a comment about the CSO's new initiative, if you have a comment about the way these guys write music together as a group and have thoughts about that, you can leave a comment on the show there. You can also find us on any of the social media machines. We're on Facebook, so like us. We're on Twitter, so follow us. We're on YouTube, so subscribe to us. We're not on Instagram or Tag or
eHarmony
or Snapchat or anything like that. So you can't connect with us there, but you can connect with us on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. And you should check out these guys on Twitter as well. These guys are Ensemble et al. On Twitter.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep. Facebook.com/ensemble et al. as well.
Cool. So we will definitely be linking to those things in our show notes as well. You can subscribe to this show and all our shows at SoundNotion TV in the iTunes store, so be sure to do that and catch every episode. You can also subscribe through other things if you're not an iTunes store person. We have the links to those on the site as well. If you'd like to support our show, you can use the Amazon affiliate links on the right side of our site. Just buy your regular Amazon stuff, but if you search for it through that little box, we get a tiny little commission that helps us out. SoundNotion's introduction includes music by Patrick Gullo. Thank you for joining us this week, Patrick. It was good to have you back. We missed you.
Thank you.
And video by Tyler Lapp. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you back next week.